The night I realized I loved my neighbor was the same night I understood I could never have her. And that contradiction cracked something open in my chest that never quite healed. It happened during a winter power outage in a quiet neighborhood outside Cedar Falls, Iowa, when the streetlights blinked out one by one and the world shrank to the sound of wind scraping ice across sidewalks. I stood at my living room window, watching the faint glow from her kitchen candles across the yard, knowing she was married, knowing I should look away, and yet feeling my heart lean toward her like it had a will of its own. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet battles people fight in their own hearts, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. My name is Thomas Walker, and at that time, my life was simple on the surface and complicated underneath. I worked as a building inspector for the county, spent my evenings fixing things that didn't really need fixing, and told myself that solitude was a choice, not a consequence. I had moved into that modest house 2 years earlier, hoping distance from my past would bring peace. Instead, it brought me Rachel Morrison, the woman next door who unknowingly rearranged the emotional furniture of my life. Rachel lived in the blue house with white shutters, the kind of place that looked cheerful even on gray days. She was married to a man named Jonathan, a regional sales manager who traveled often and spoke proudly about ambition and growth whenever I ran into him. They had no children, at least not yet, and from the outside, their life looked polished and intact. Rachel volunteered at the local church pantry, grew tomatoes along the shared fence, and waved every morning with a kindness that felt genuine, not performative. I told myself she was just a neighbor. My heart disagreed quietly, day by day. The trouble with loving someone like Rachel was that it didn't arrive as a dramatic lightning strike. It crept in through ordinary moments. It came in the way she bent to pick up fallen mail for an elderly neighbor, or how she laughed at her own clumsiness when she dropped a bag of groceries. It showed up when she asked about my day and actually listened, as if my answer mattered. I never crossed a line. I never wanted to. But feelings are not governed by ethics, and mine grew without permission. As months passed, I began to notice the cracks in the picture-perfect frame next door. Jonathan's car was gone more often than it was home. Rachel spent long evenings alone on her porch, wrapped in a sweater, staring at nothing in particular. Sometimes I would be outside too, pretending to check the mailbox or take out the trash, sharing the same quiet without acknowledging why it felt heavy. We spoke about weather, about church fundraisers, about trivial things that safely avoided the truth simmering underneath. The hardest part was that Rachel was kind to everyone, not just me. I had to constantly remind myself that what I felt wasn't special, that it didn't mean she felt the same. And yet, there were moments when our eyes lingered a second too long, when the air between us seemed charged with something unspoken. I would go back inside afterward, heart racing, ashamed of emotions I hadn't asked for and couldn't confess. Things began to change the spring. Jonathan accepted a promotion that required even more travel. Rachel grew quieter. Her smile didn't reach her eyes the way it used to. One evening, after a storm knocked down part of the fence between our yards, I helped her prop it back up. We worked in silence, mud on our hands, rain soaking our jackets, and I sensed a sadness in her that felt deeper than exhaustion. I wanted to ask if she was okay. I didn't. Loving someone who belongs to someone else teaches you restraint in ways nothing else can. Over time, Rachel began to confide in small, careful pieces. She spoke about loneliness without using the word, about feeling invisible in her own marriage, about praying for clarity and peace. I listened, carrying the weight of her trust with caution. Every word she shared made me want to protect her, and every instinct to protect her reminded me of my place. I was her neighbor, nothing more, nothing less, or so I kept telling myself. The real turning point came during a summer heat wave when Jonathan returned unexpectedly. Their arguments weren't loud, but the tension was unmistakable. Doors closed harder than necessary. Rachel stopped coming outside. The porch lights stayed off at night. I worried about her, not as a man in love, but as a human being who couldn't stand the thought of someone hurting quietly next door. Still, I respected boundaries, even when my heart rebelled. Then one morning, Rachel's house went up for sale. The sign appeared without warning, planted firmly in the front yard like a declaration. I stood frozen on my driveway, coffee growing cold in my hand. The realization that she might leave, that this chapter of quiet longing might end without resolution, hit harder than I expected. It forced me to confront a truth I had been avoiding. Loving her had changed me. It had softened me, made me more patient, more aware of other people's hidden struggles. It had also taught me about letting go. Rachel told me she was moving back to Ohio to be closer to her sister. The marriage, she said gently, had ended not in scandal but in exhaustion. Two good people had grown in different directions. There was no triumph in her voice, only acceptance. I nodded, offered help with packing, and wished her peace, even as something inside me fractured quietly. The day she left, the neighborhood felt emptier. I helped load the last box, watched the moving truck disappear down the street, and returned to my silent house. I expected relief. What I felt instead was gratitude mixed with grief. Loving her had never been about possession. It had been about witnessing someone's humanity up close and being changed by it. Before we reach the ending, please leave a comment right now sharing where you're watching from, or a simple heart if this story resonates with you. Your comments mean more than you know. Life moved forward, as it always does. Seasons changed. I focused on work, reconnected with my faith, and learned to sit with loneliness without letting it define me. Months later, a postcard arrived from Ohio. Rachel wrote about starting over, about healing, about learning to be whole on her own. She thanked me for being a steady presence during a confusing chapter of her life. There was no promise, no hint of what might have been, just gratitude. It was enough. Years later, I still live in the same house. New neighbors came and went. The fence was replaced. The blue house eventually sold to a young family with loud children and bright chalk drawings on the driveway. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I think about Rachel and what loving her taught me. It taught me that not all love stories end in togetherness. Some end in growth, some end in quiet acceptance, and some, like mine, end in a deeper understanding of what it means to care without expecting anything in return. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a love you had to let go of or a feeling you couldn't act on, please like this video, share it with someone who might understand, and leave a comment below. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive and reminds others they are not alone. I never told Rachel I loved her. And somehow, that truth sits peacefully in my chest now, not as regret, but as proof that love can be real, transformative, and still choose the right thing.